First time I came to Boston, I thought I was in the middle of a jigsaw puzzle with pieces missing. The streets start and stop. They're narrow and confusing. Some of them don't go anywhere. But then when I came out to Fenway Park, I realized just why the ballpark was so quirky. See, Fenway has been fit into this haphazard pattern of streets. It's just been sort of squeezed into this industrial area. And it's just like the city that surrounds it.
Boston at the turn of the century was a bustling little seaport city with an increasingly popular baseball team, the Red Sox. By 1911, the team's popularity was so great that a new ballpark had to be built to accommodate its growing legion of fans. Fenway Park was built in a marshy area of Boston called the Fens, near Kenmore Square, and opened its gates for the first time on April 20th, 1912. It was a quirky little ballpark right from the start, filled with idiosyncrasies like Duffy's Cliff, a 10-foot-high slope that ran along the left field wall.
Duffy's Cliff was a little terrace that extended from the left field foul line back to center field, and it was named for Duffy Lewis, who patrolled it out there in left field when he played for the Boston Red Sox. And there was an old story about Smead Jolly that he would go up the cliff and come down and miss the ball as he came down. And he said, well, they taught me how to go up, but nobody taught me how to come back down.
The Red Sox were world champions in 1915, 16, and 1918. The team at that time was owned by Harry Frazee, a Broadway theater producer who had more flops than hits. He was forced to sell many of his star players to remain solvent.
In 1919, Ruth had the big year, hit 29 home runs. So his friend was Jake Rupert, who owned the Yankees. And Rupert was trying to build up the New York Ball Club. We owned the town, we owned baseball for about 5 years, and Rupert was trying to make something with the Yankees. So Rupert offered him $140,000 or something to that effect, and a mortgage on the Fenway Park if he'd send Ruth. And he sent him to him. And we lost Babe Ruth in 1919.
The sale of Ruth marked the end of the Red Sox' decade-long dominance, but the beginning of the Yankees' dynasty. In the dark years of the Great Depression, the club was sold to lumber magnate Thomas A. Yawkey. Immediately in 1933, Yawkey began renovating a neglected Fenway Park, expanding the outfield bleachers and shoring up the wooden seats with a concrete base. Yawkey also replaced the great wooden wall in left field with a menacing metal barrier, and in 1936 installed a 23-foot screen on top of the monstrous wall to protect shop windows on Lansdowne Street.
At one time, it was just the wall, and you'd hear the balls, see balls go over the fence and hear glass breaking. Bill Huddleston had a bar across the street, and Huddleston used to sit in the press box and he'd hear the glass shattering. That's his bar, see? And someone said, there goes another window, Bill, and oh, he'd rush out of the place and change his window. So, as I said, it was a fun place. You went away laughing. You came in mad at the team, but you went away laughing with the things that happened.
This is the Green Monster in Fenway Park, the most celebrated outfield fence in baseball. No other stadium feature in the major leagues affects the game quite like this 37-foot, 2-inch high wall. It's only 315 feet down the left field foul line, so if you're hanging on to a 3-run lead going into the bottom of the 9th inning, that really doesn't mean very much when you got the monster breathing down your neck. As many Red Sox pitchers will tell you, the wall giveth and the wall taketh away.
Fred Lynn and I were standing on the on-deck circle. I said, Freddie, I'm going to hit one off the wall, drive me in. And why I said that or why I felt that, I had no idea. And he says, well, that sounds good to me. And then 2 pitches later, I hit the ball off the foul pole or above the wall. If that had been in any of the newer ballparks, the foul line would have been further away and the ball might have hooked foul. But it being the ballpark that it is, it's created quite a few very, very special moments in the history of baseball.
But the wall taketh away, too. Most Red Sox fans recall with agony one home run in particular. This one off the bat of Yankee shortstop Bucky Dent.
After the final game of the 1978 season, when the Yankees won the American League East by beating the Red Sox, there was a dead silence over the field. No one wanted to go home. It had been such a wonderful pennant race. Everyone stood still, a standing, silent ovation for what had gone on. And the public address announcer played calliope music, like children going to a fair, the carousel where the hobby horses go around. It was eerie. Nobody moved, nobody said a thing. They listened to this marvelous calliope music.
All across the country, you hear people saying, boy, they'd love to see a game at Fenway Park, and I think the biggest reason is the outfield walls. There's so many different dimensions. It's not like most ballparks with the round type wall. It's you know, we have the big 37-foot wall out there in left field. Then in center field we have what everybody refers to as the triangle, where it goes out to 420 feet. And then the way the bullpens and the right field wall curve around. It's an exciting ballpark to watch a game in. It's an exciting ballpark to play a game in.
Small enough, yet big enough. Everyone has fun, and the wall is green. Right.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I have a daughter that's home right now, and when she finds out that I was here to a Yankee-Red Sox game, she's going to want to kill me because she's not here.
My best memory here was watching Mel Parnell pitch. He was one of our best left-handed pitchers that we had as a child. My dad used to take us on family night. Sat in the grandstand behind third base.
The ivy and the fern, and it's gracious. That's what it is. It's a gracious park.
Used to wave at Ted Williams when he wouldn't wave back, and my kids all thought he did. When he tipped his hat or he didn't tip it, I'd say, see, he saw us. He didn't see us.
Fenway's fans are probably the most knowledgeable and have the most intimate relationship with the people who write about the teams. I remember walking through Fenway Park once with a fellow named Bob Ryan, a wonderful sports writer, very tart and funny, real wit, but also very critical of things. Walking through Fenway Park with him one day, and a man who might have weighed 300 pounds stood up about 3 rows back as we were walking past and said, "Bob Ryan." And Ryan said to me, "Keep walking." And he said, "Bobby Ryan, you hear me?" And Ryan turned around, and the guy stood up and pointed at me. He says, "Nice column today, Ryan." That could only happen in Boston.
This red seat in the 37th row of the right field bleachers is where Ted Williams, one of the greatest left-handed batters of all time, hit his longest Fenway Park home run.
There was an old guy sitting there in one of those old straw skimmers. You remember the ribbons? And he's sound asleep. And the ball comes down and hits him on the straw hat, breaks his hat, and wakes him up. It's a true story.
Williams hit so many of them out here that fans began calling it Williamsburg, and another piece of Fenway folklore was born.
All of these cities that have them old ballparks are the greatest baseball towns in the country. Now, I know Cincinnati had their old little Crosby Field, and it developed fans because I know why it developed fans. I know why it developed fans because the hitters came to the front in those parks a little more. The hitters.
Williams had a remarkable career spanning parts of 4 decades. In 1960, he finally called it quits, but on his very last at-bat, he gave the fans at Fenway Park one last moment to save it.
Every time I got up there, I tried to hit a ball hard. I didn't even think of a home run my last time at bat. I was trying to hit a home run like I always did. If I had the count or I had a pitcher I thought I could do it against, and I'd hit 2 balls good that day. And they just were short, and I hit them good. I thought they should be gone. But it was one of those little dampish days, and it was no wind really, not foggy and dead. And I hit 2 balls 400 feet out there, and hell, they were outs. And the last time up, I hit one probably, apparently just a little bit better, and he got in there, home run.
After a decade of second-rate finishes by the Red Sox in the late 50s and early 60s, interest in the team had dwindled, but owner Tom Yawkey was slowly building a winner with players like Rico Petrocelli, Tony Conigliaro, and Carl Yastrzemski. Finally, in 1967, the fans had a reason to return to Fenway Park.
67 changed the entire Red Sox organization, changed the attitude of the fans in New England. Now they thought as Red Sox as winners and not losers, and that's what brought baseball back in New England.
That period from July right down to the first day of October when that season ended was an incredible time, because every single day that you went to the ballpark, you knew that everybody in New England was listening or watching or at the ballpark, and it was just an experience that I'll never, ever forget.
Every player on that team wanted to win that pennant for Mr. New Yorkie that year, and somehow dug deep inside to come up with that little extra.
1976 marked the end of the long and prosperous reign of Tom Yawkey, a truly unique individual in the history of baseball. Yawkey died at age 73.
After I made a speech, on the spur of the moment, I decided to trot around alongside the seats and just shake hands with fans, and I went around the whole ballpark doing that. What really helped was the tremendous reaction that the fans gave me, because after 23 years, I was going to retire from something that I loved. I just felt I wanted to thank them, and I really showed, I guess, emotion for the first time in all the years that I played at Fenway Park. I would say that would have to be the #1 highlight of my career.
To me, Carl was the best at playing left field. And when I first saw him, he had a tougher wall to play. Since 1976, they put panels on that wall, and you get I'd say you get a true bounce off of it. When I saw him play, there was 4x6 panels up there, and the ball might carry him 5 different ways. He'd play a very shallow left field. He'd take the line drive away from the hitter. If the ball was hit over his head, he felt that it was going to be off the wall anyway. He couldn't catch it. So he'd rather take that line drive base hit away from him. Also, a ground ball through the hole, he had a better chance of throwing somebody out. He played an aggressive left field, and the best left field that I saw.
They've had 3 outfielders before myself in the last 40 years, and to think that I could possibly be the 4th in 50 years is a great feeling. And you know, that wall has a lot of tradition, and I want to be a part of it.
Each of these parks had its own characteristics, had its own personality. Generation to generation came to these parks. They expected to see baseball there and enjoy the atmosphere outdoors in a real baseball setting. And as these parks go away, we lose all those things too.
Some things should not change, in my view, and I think these parks have certainly been a big part of our lives, because baseball is America's greatest pastime. It's focused on tradition, it's focused on stability and family, and we'll lose a lot of that with Comiskey Park gone, Briggs Stadium gone, with Fenway gone and Wrigley Field gone.
You can say, well, if they tore down Fenway Park, we could build a new one. You wouldn't build it right. It's better to make the accommodations to save the old ballparks. If Fenway Park needs skyboxes to bring in the poverty-stricken owners enough money to save the stadium, before they tear it down and move someplace else, build the damn skyboxes. If Wrigley Field needs lights to survive, put up the damn lights. If you need structural reinforcements in Tiger Stadium so that you don't have people sniping at the ballpark the way they sniped at Comiskey Park, make the damn structural improvements, but save the ballpark. Because when you try to rebuild a cathedral 500 years too late, it doesn't come out the same.
Was so great that a new ballpark had to be built to accommodate its growing legion of fans. Fenway Park was built in a marshy area of Boston called the Fens, near Kenmore Square, and opened its gates for the first time on April 20th, 1912. It was a quirky little ballpark right from the start, filled with idiosyncrasies like Duffy's Cliff, a 10-foot-high slope that ran along the left field wall.
Duffy's Cliff was a little terrace that extended from the left field foul line back to center field, and it was named for Duffy Lewis, who patrolled it out there in left field when he played for the Boston Red Sox. And there was an old story about Smead Jolly that he would go up the cliff and come down and miss the ball as he came down. And he said, well, they taught me how to go up, but nobody taught me how to come back down.
The Red Sox were
realized just why the ballpark was so quirky. See, Fenway has been fit into this haphazard pattern of streets. It's just been sort of squeezed into this industrial area, and it's just like the city that surrounds it.
Boston at the turn of the century was a bustling little seaport city with an increasingly popular baseball team, the Red Sox. By 1911, the team's popular champions in 1915, 16, and 1918. The team at that time was owned by Harry Frazee, a Broadway theater producer who had more flops than hits. He was forced to sell many of his star players to remain solvent.
In 1919, Ruth had the big year, hit 29 home runs. So his friend was Jake Rupert, who owned the Yankees. And Rupert was trying to build up the New York.
First time I came to Boston, I thought I was in the middle of a jigsaw puzzle with pieces missing. The streets start and stop. They're narrow and confusing. Some of them don't go anywhere. But then when I came out to Fenway Park, I realized